We begin with a historic decision for Sweden and Finland, who have announced their intention to apply to join NATO, hoping the Western military alliance will bolster their security following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Already NATO partners, their accession looked like a done deal, but NATO member Turkey now says it will not approve the bids. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan repeated his accusation that Sweden and Finland are harbouring members of groups that Ankara deems terrorists. Moscow has described Sweden and Finland's moves as a mistake, warning that it would be forced to restore military balance, including the use of nuclear weapons. Swedish accession to NATO would end 2 centuries of Swedish military neutrality. Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson underscored the significance of this change in her country's security policy.
It is a historical and considerable shift for our country. We are leaving one era and beginning another. But we can enter this new era with confidence because we are doing it with the best of our history. The invasion of Ukraine shows what Russia is prepared to do, and we must consider the possibility of Russia acting with the same risk-taking in our immediate neighbourhood. Threatening statements have been made against us from the Russian side. Sweden categorically rejects these threats. Our security policy is a matter for Sweden and no one else. And a strong Nordic voice in NATO gives us increased opportunities to protect our common interests in the Baltic Sea region. The best thing for the security of Sweden and the security of the Swedish people is to join NATO and do it together with Finland.
Well, Finland's Minister for European Affairs, Tutti Tuppurainen, explained to DW why her country had decided to apply for NATO membership now.
Well, February 24th changed everything for us. It was the wake-up call, not just for us Finns, but to us all, to assess the changing security environment. And let us be clear that Finland has not been neutral in any sense. We have been firmly rooted in the Western sphere of the world. We have been member in the European Union since 1995. So in that sense, it was quite natural for our public to react to this war in a way that the support for NATO membership was huge already from the first polls in early March. None of us is surprised that Kremlin is not in favor of NATO enlargement. It has expressed its dismay for Finland and Sweden joining NATO already for many years. So that is nothing new. And they've also said that they will have to do some kind of balancing measures if we should join NATO. But we will not let Russia intimidate us. Russia cannot dictate our own national decisions. And on the other hand, it can also be possible that Russia simply states the obvious, that Finland has already been so close to NATO. We have enhanced opportunities, partnership with NATO. So we are already so close as one can be without being an actual member. So it can be possible that Russia simply adapts to this new reality.
Let's look at this new reality with Elizabeth Braw. She's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute think tank. She joins us from Washington. Well, welcome to DW. So we have Sweden and Finland speaking about feeling vulnerable following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What is their fear? What Russian action are they hoping to ensure themselves against by joining NATO?
I don't think they would specify any particular fear out of concern that Russia may then do it precisely that. But it is the generally deteriorating security environment in the region. And we should remember that Russia is active in many areas, military areas and areas below the threshold of armed violence, what is usually called grey zone aggression. So all of that creates an environment where Russia can use really any tool that it comes up with to harm Finland or Sweden or any other country. And they have been very good at defending themselves. But with such an all-encompassing threat, they have wisely decided that it's better to be inside the alliance, with which they are already cooperating very closely without getting the benefit of any security guarantees.
Right. And so Sweden and Finland say, all right, we're going to apply to join NATO, and all the NATO countries except Turkey say, yay! Would Ukraine have cause to feel hard done by? Because if this happens, NATO's refused to protect Ukraine because Ukraine's not a member, even though they want to be. And now Sweden and Finland are asking for protection while their application is being considered.
Well, it is a bit ironic, is it not, that Ukraine is stuck in this war allegedly because it wanted to join NATO. That was Russia's Russia's stated motivation for invading Ukraine, or wanting to dictate its fate, whereas Sweden and Finland are at peace and are not being invaded at the moment by Russia, and were not even planning to join NATO, and now all of a sudden they're walking in through an open door, because apart from Turkey, no country seems likely to voice any objection, and they are incredibly attractive candidates, which is of course the difference between them and Ukraine. For reasons fair and unfair, they have all the sort of attributes that NATO wants in a candidate or a member, whereas Ukraine, it really would have a hard time gaining membership, even if there were no war at the moment. So it maybe it's unfair, maybe it's not, but it is ironic at the very least.
Right. We'll come to Turkey's objections in just a moment, but first I'd like you to help us understand Russia's reaction. On the one hand, we have the Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Ryabkov, quoted as saying that Sweden and Finland, they should have no illusions that we will simply put up with it, and nor should Brussels, Washington and other NATO capitals. So he's there saying this has gone too far. Now let's hear from the Russian president.
As for the NATO expansion, including through the new members of the alliance, Finland and Sweden, I would like to inform you that Russia has no problem with these states. And therefore the expansion at the expense of these countries does not create a direct threat to us, Russia. But the expansion of military infrastructure over that territory will obviously call for our response. And we will determine what that response is based on the threats created.
So, Elizabeth Braw, we have a Russian foreign minister promising the fires of hell, and Vladimir Putin apparently sitting there going, meh.
That's right. And before Sweden and Finland made these announcements, there were various menacing statements from Russian officials. But the reality is, as your Finnish minister, who was just quoted, said, Russia has been in no doubt about where Finland's loyalties lie, where Sweden's loyalties lie. They have been essentially cohabiting with NATO for a number of years now. Russia didn't think these were some single countries out there up for grabs who might join Russia in some sort of alliance. They have been integrating so closely with NATO that it's just a matter of practicality to step inside the tent and get that protection. So Vladimir Putin, who may be irrational in other ways, clearly recognizes that. And also, by stating that this is not an existential threat, he's essentially saying there won't be a nuclear response from Russia, which is what so many observers had been worrying about, and the threat that various lower level officials had been voicing. But if the president of Russia says this is not an existential threat, clearly that is the last word from Russia on whether it is an existential threat.
OK, let's talk about Turkey then, threatening to hold up proceedings for Sweden and Finland because President Erdogan says he accuses them of harbouring terrorists. So do we believe Ankara's objections are genuine, or is President Erdogan looking to make some sort of deal? What does he want?
Well, President Erdogan wouldn't be President Erdogan if he didn't try to get something out of any given situation. He's an extremely skilled tactician, so I think that's what's happening here. He sees an opportunity where he has leverage, meaning his government has to ratify the accession of these two countries, otherwise they won't be joining NATO. So he can get something out of it. I don't think there's any doubt that at the end of the day, Turkey will ratify their accession. But President Erdogan clearly has spotted an opportunity to get something out of it, and so he may make various demands on NATO member states, on Sweden and Finland, and for example, he may demand that Turkey finally gets those F-35s it's been wanting to get. That's something that has been blocked by the US government. There is, however, a twist in Sweden, which is that the current government is extremely weak and depends on one parliamentarian who is an independent to get its legislation through parliament. And she has very strong feelings about the Kurds and is now saying, well, the Swedish government is being soft on Turkey. So we'll see where that leads. But without her vote, the government will struggle mightily to get legislation through parliament. But of course, it has Turkey on one side, this lone parliamentarian on the other side. We'll see where that goes.
Good talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us and explaining that to us. Elizabeth Braw from the American Enterprise Institute in Washington.